They do. And as you know, God doesn't make mistakes.
Okay.
God made us smart enough to know when it wasn't going to work for us. That's the beauty of giving us freedom of choice.
No.
Say what?
Oh, wow. I didn't know that Whoopi Goldberg was a Christian. All right, friends, welcome to Look and Live. You're here with Pastor James DeVallon. Here on The View, Elizabeth Hasslebeck, which was one of the co-hosts of The Views years ago now, has come back with the conservative perspective, with a Christian perspective, talking about abortion. So we're going to take a listen. I'll put a link to this video below. So I will be analyzing the video, pause and react to this video. If that is something you want to watch, I will say check out the link, okay? Because I got some comments from people who are saying, why are you pausing and talking? Well, that's kind of what I'm doing. So let's get to this thing now. So this is Elizabeth Warren now sharing a little bit of perspective on the situation here. I will be pausing and commenting along the way. Let's take a listen.
You think it's an ectopic pregnancy?
It was an ectopic pregnancy because the fetus was growing in the fallopian tube. It was not an abortion and it was not a miscarriage.
Right, so I think some people try to link those two together. And
but you see what I'm saying,
either
you
way,
die.
Which is,
you die.
It's sad, you know, that's a grief, right? So that's a grief. And I think whether you struggled with fertility like I did, you know, you were here. I mean, I was trying to get acupuncture, trying to have a baby. If you struggle with infertility, whether you had an ectopic pregnancy, whether you've had a number of miscarriages, which you grieve, and that's hard. I think one thing we're failing to mention to women, as women, is that there are options out there that extend beyond abortion.
Yes, very true, very true. A lot of women, when they go to do an abortion, they don't get to hear there are other options. There are other steps. That's why we were talking about the pregnancy centers that Elizabeth Warren is looking to shut down are so effective and powerful. They're giving women other options because a lot of women who are thinking about abortion, it's a struggle for them. If somebody could give them the right option to think about, they probably will have not had an abortion. But many of these abortion clinics, the way it is run from my research and from my studies, it seems that they care more about making money than they care about giving these women options before making such a decision. So she's on point with that.
Personally believe, not because I believe life has value, because I believe our Creator assigns value to life.
Great, great, great statement here, Elizabeth. I love the fact she's bold for Jesus. She's not afraid of speaking her mind in these secular networks such as The View and calling out the fact that the reason a pro-life person has the right to fight for the lives of the unborn, it is because of their biblical values. We don't have to sugarcoat it. It's a fact. We believe God created men and life has value and worth because God created those children. And it is never right to kill them, whether they are born or unborn. It's just wrong for them to be done. So the fact she highlights the fact it is coming from God, it is significant that she made that stand. Let's keep going.
And those lives have plan and purpose over them as designed by God that are not limited to the circumstances of conception nor the situations they're born into. But I do think there are options out there. There are thousands of agencies that wrap around women that might not be able to care for the baby once born, or may not want the baby when they're pregnant, or maybe it was unexpected and they're in a hard situation, but that will come around at no cost and wrap around you. And I might not change your minds, but I hope women out there know to look for the nonprofits, look for the agencies that help you create a birth plan and match you with an adoptive family who may have suffered miscarriage after miscarriage, who want to care for the baby. So that option's real and it's out there. And I don't believe in giving women half the information out there. And I think those lives have a precious value on them.
They do. And as you know, God doesn't make mistakes.
Okay.
God made us smart enough to know when it wasn't going to work for us. That's the beauty of giving us freedom of choice.
No.
That's incorrect. The very first thing that Whoopi Goldberg, I mean, I have no issue against Whoopi Goldberg at all. I used to love watching The Views until I really started watching what they were saying. Some of these women, I really don't think they are reasoning from cause to effect. And I think sometimes it's an act for political stunts or virtue signaling, or because they're just trying to stand for the political position. Or they're just plainly ignorant. And I hate to say it to be rude in any way. I think some of these ladies, they just say stuff just for views, just to be watched, just to be exposed. They want the attention. I think that's what's going on here. The fact she said that God has given you the freedom of choice to know and the intelligence to know when it is not right to keep a baby is already erroneous. First of all, if God had given you that intelligence, you should have used it before you came to a place where you had to decide to have an abortion. In other words, true intelligence is displayed not so much in correcting the wrong that was done, but in preventing it. To me, it's like there is not so much of a discussion about that to these women. So they're setting up people for failures here. So Whoopi Goldberg, you better off not mentioning God if you're gonna go with this line of thinking.
Yes, because I know my relationship. My relationship is always choppy.
That is, I believe that. That is a choppy relationship that will make such a statement. If you had a relationship with God, at least the bottom line of what you will understand from your Christian view is that God hates murder. God hates the sacrifice of the innocents. God does not want the blood of the unborn to be spilled because of the selfishness of a mother or because of other circumstances either. So it's one thing to have a medical crisis in our hands here where the mother's life versus the child, and we have to choose between the one. Of course, we're going to choose the mother 100% of the time. But that's not what we have here, particularly when it comes to abortion. We're dealing with a lot more selfish decisions. And again, some of them is not just selfish. Some of these women are under a lot of pressure. And I think abortion should be the last option in the list. So this concept of my relationship with God is very choppy, very choppy. I believe it to be true.
With God. It's always choppy. With God, always, because I have a lot of questions.
You're his favorite.
Listen, I have no doubt, but I also know that God made me smart enough to know that if there are alternatives out there that can work for me, I will investigate them. But I also know God said, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I will not.
I would have paused right there and asked Whoopi Goldberg, where in the Bible is that verse found? I'm sure she doesn't even know. Well, anyway, but the thing is, that verse right there that she's using doesn't actually speak in favor of abortion at all. It actually does the exact opposite. You see, do unto others as you will have them do unto you. The essence of this is don't hurt, mistreat anybody else if you will not want them to do the same thing to you. So since we're talking about abortion, let's bring the verse into the context of that discussion. Do unto others as you will have him do unto you. When it comes to the abortion case, do unto the baby as you will have him do what? Unto you. So in other words, why would you want to kill the child when you know if you were in the child position, would you want to be murdered by your parents? So that verse really is more like a pro-life verse. So it doesn't speak for abortion at all. But again, when a person doesn't have a biblical perspective and a correct view on doctrines and knowledge of the Word of God, this is what they do. Unfortunately, Whoopi Goldberg, I'm sure, and I can't prove it, but I'm sure, she hasn't read her Bible for years. I don't even think she's been in church for a long time. Maybe she's been, but she might be going to a church where they ain't saying nothing. A lot of people talk about God as if they know God, but very few are actually having a relationship with God. And I think this right here, where you're fighting for abortion, you have a lot of anger issues, You make a lot of statements for virtue signaling, and you're using the Bible to try to prove a case. Is the worst thing I have seen them done on The View. To me, you're better off arguing for the political sake. At least I can agree and disagree with you from that perspective. But when you bring the Bible into the equation, you make yourself look really, really bad.
Make that decision for anybody.
What about the life in the womb? You know, I will say this, that life has a plan and a purpose designed by God. I don't believe there's any circumstance where we should give the death penalty to an innocent.
That's exactly correct. The life in itself was given by God. Yes, God did not initiate the birth. God did not make the decision. But once you made that decision, God himself, the law of nature, carries out his order, right? So with that, even though the child might have been born in very strange and difficult circumstances, does that mean they deserve to die? Does suffering, difficulty, challenges mean that the child does not deserve life? Who are you to determine when a child is worth living? And how many individuals who were born in very strange and very challenging circumstances, but are making great differences in our world today? What if their mother had decided to abort them? You see, just because you don't know the future, just because you don't know what's going to happen from today and on, you can't make that decision. And there's a lot of mothers out there, I'm pretty sure they wish they still had given birth to their child. Some mothers really wish they never had an abortion, and it's a fact.
I love that you feel that way.
That's why I brought this towel.
It's great.
For all of you. Just if you want to see this.
What does it say? I agree with you, but then we will both be wrong. I would agree with you, but then we will both be wrong. I love that. She came prepared.
Because we're not going to agree, but I hope that women out there know that that's off in there. This says, I'd agree with you, but then we'd both be wrong.
I like it.
And I love you all.
And I say this to you with love in my heart. Listen, I don't ever think that I can make any decision for you and your family that you are not smart enough to make for yourself. And God knows my heart. And God knows most everybody's heart. And
something's wrong with this argument. Good decisions doesn't always means smartness and intelligence. We have people who are very intelligent that are making very, very bad decisions. As a matter of fact, we have people who are not so intelligent that are making all the right decisions. So this idea, if you're not smart enough, means you making bad decisions, is not fully true in all cases. Now, don't get me wrong. The more intelligence you have, the smarter you have, the more power you have when it comes to doing certain things, okay? But this doesn't necessarily mean you're going to make good decisions just because you were smart. First of all, I want to argue this. Real good and solid decisions are made because you have a positive, godly, moral compass. I want to rephrase that. If you have a knowledge of right and wrong, you have good discernment, you know the will of God. That's how you make good decisions. It's not because you're intelligent, because I can see a lot of intelligent men in science right now, a lot of scholars that are just acting really, can I use the word stupid? PhD and so on, and they are making bad decisions. They're very intelligent individuals. You see, it's not a matter of how smart you are. It's a matter of how spiritually minded you are. It's not a matter of how much knowledge you have. It's, do you really have wisdom? It's not a matter of how much you know. It's really, who do you know? Like, do you know him? Because ultimately, a person who knows God will not be talking so silly right now.
again, before we go, let me just point out, no one at this table is not pro-life. Nobody at this table is not pro-life.
That is very strange and confusing. So you are pro-life, but you're arguing for pro-abortion. I got it. I got it, but I don't get it.
I just want to make sure we all know that nobody is happy about going to get an abortion.
That's not pro-life.
It's not fun.
It's a hard decision, but that life has a plan and a purpose, and there are agencies out there that will help you keep that baby alive.
And they will, and you can, I bet if you look on Elizabeth's Instagram, she may be able to, there may be listings there.
I will do that today.
There are options for everyone, and everyone has the right to them. We'll be right back. Okay, I'm sorry.
I appreciate the fact she made these remarks, although I may disagree with her. But at least she was humble enough to do that. All right, let's appreciate that. Let's go to part 2 of this video. Let's continue.
Okay, so we have a couple of things we need to do. Joy?
Yes, I was describing what was in the fallopian tube as a fetus. It's not a fetus yet. It's an embryo at that point. So I skipped that in hygiene when I was in school. So
she wasn't just an English teacher. She was also a science teacher.
I wasn't good in biology and those topics. Anyway.
Now, this is... Oh, do you want to...
Well, no, you were...
I just jumped on you.
That's okay. You were going to say...
Well, I think this issue is so hard when you get into conversations because there's philosophically a difference of belief when you get into when life starts. And I think that the problem I have with this is normally I wouldn't say I'm right and you're wrong in a lot of conversations. But in this instance, when it comes to legislating Roe v. Wade, I think there's a more American version, and that is a woman's right to choose. And I say this for this reason. This was a country that was built on the freedom of religion. And that was that we're going to coexist in a country where we can feel different things and live next to people that have totally different views than us. Because we disagree on that, by allowing me to make my choice, I am not choosing to murder a baby. I am choosing to do the right thing for my life. And to coexist, you have to allow for that legislation to exist because we disagree, and it becomes an overstep, I find, of religion, one religion, onto other people.
Come on, she's saying so many different things here, and it's hard to dissect it because she's trying to make it appear as if abortion is a constitutional right in a free in freedom, in a free society, such as we have today in America. I'm going to explain to you where this is completely inconsistent, right? But I'm going to allow her to finish her comment. She's saying so much stuff. And it's like, for me listening to this, it's like it's all gibberish. It's all tangled up. It's almost like you take this rubber ball and you're just winding it around. That's kind of what she's doing with her thoughts. And it's actually a little bit confusing. But I don't think it needs to be that confusing. I'm going to explain a little bit later. Anyway, let her finish her line.
There are some people in Florida right now that...
I don't understand why they're clapping for, so let's back it up.
...onto other people. There are some people in Florida right now that...
So putting your religion onto other people, does killing a child have anything to do with religion, really? We can actually get rid of religion when it comes to that reality. My question is simply this. If you have any sense of morality, is murder wrong? When it is done in our streets, how do we feel? Is that a religious conviction to know that when a young man is butchered, killed, or a cop is shot on the job, or a cop shoots a man, whatever happens in our streets, the gang-related violence, when we see death, do we say it's because I'm religious that I think this is wrong? Do you say it's because I'm human and I have a heart that I know this is wrong? Do you see what I'm saying? So you can get rid of the religious stuff. Actually, you can put the Bible aside for a minute here. You don't need a Bible to tell you that murdering children in a room is bad. You really don't. All you simply need is a mind and a decent heart of understanding, which I would say, I'm pretty sure they would argue that they have that. But when it comes to abortion, something is really backward in that thinking.
...onto other people. There are some people in Florida right now that there's a rabbi, a minister, a couple other people. There was a great article that we had last night in the packet about how they feel this is actually an overstep toward their religion. And I kind of feel the same way. I grew up in the church, and I have certain beliefs that, depending on who you compare me to, I'm very much LGBTQ plus. Make sure I didn't miss any letters there. And that's because I prayed on that. And the same thing goes for things like this. I just disagree with the way it is housed in a pro-life argument. And I'm at peace with this because one thing that I did read in the Bible that was enforced over and over and over is thou shalt not judge. You will have a judgment day and you will come to your maker. And if someone is right and I am murdering babies or people are murdering babies, then they will have that judgment day. But there's a chance that each one of us could be wrong. And if that's the case, then I trust an individual to have their chance at life to make the decisions they want, and they will meet their maker.
Can I ask you something, Sarah?
Wow. First, making the decisions about abortion should never be determined by some religious men. It is not a matter of religious view or what some religious guys are saying in support of abortion that matters to me. What should matter to the Christian man is the word of God. Your conviction in God's word concerning this matter is the acid test, not religious men. So I want to get rid of those religious guys, whoever they are. I'm not condemning. I don't know what their position may be. And the second thing is, she said, thou shalt not judge. I don't necessarily know which verse she's referring to. And I know a lot of people like to speak about thou shalt not judge from Matthew 7 verse 1. This is probably the most quoted verse for people who are looking for a reason to do something and not be called out on it. They will say, judge not that you be not judged. It's not really thou shalt not judge. That passage, thou shalt not judge, I haven't read it in my Bible. Now, for with what judgment you meet, you shall be judged. Now, oftentimes this passage is used to say, don't judge me if I'm doing something wrong. Let God be the judge. But when they say this, they kind of saying, don't correct me, don't call me out, don't rebuke me. That's really what they're saying. What's wrong with this? The passage is not saying we can't call somebody out or judge somebody's evil doings, right? In other words, we have to get rid of all judges in the land. But the thing is, it says, with what measure you meet, it shall be measured to you again. The idea is simply this. Jesus explains it in verse 3. Why beholdest thou the mote that is in thy brother's eye, but considerest not now the beam that is in thine own eyes? The idea is this. You cannot judge a person for something they're doing wrong if you are guilty of doing something even worse than what they're doing. That's what the idea of the mote and the beam is about. The beam is like a big log that you have in your eye. A mote is like a little chip of wood that is in a person's eye. So you can't say, let me help you with your mote when you have a beam in your own eyes. So it is in this context that you cannot judge. So if you are guilty of a particular thing that the Bible actually refers to as wrong, you should not judge another person who is guilty of something either similar or smaller than that. So this idea of thou shalt not judge is incorrect, because the Bible even says you should judge righteous judgment. Sometimes the church have to do some judging, not judging to condemn, but judging to correct and judging to reprove a person. It is significant. So in a sense of abortion, it's not wrong for a Christian to say, this is wrong, this is not right, this is a murder. No, that judgment is actually a good thing, because you're calling somebody out on that. And some people need to be called out, and that's how we can come to make a difference, to change. So if you're afraid of judging people to reprove them, that's not Christian either. Actually, it is very Christian to call somebody out on a particular sin. So I'm not sure what she's talking about exactly here.
To make the decisions they want, and they will meet their maker.
Can I ask you something?
And here's another thing. Don't judge them because we don't know who is right and wrong. That is crazy, because we know what is right and wrong based on the word of God. And if you know somebody's going the wrong direction, as a Christian, you know better. It is our responsibility to tell them the truth, because we do not want to wait until they get in the judgment to find out they were dead wrong. If we know what the Bible says, yeah, we have a job to tell them that. We have a job to call them out. We have a job to reprove, instruct, and correct them leading them into the light of truth. That's the duty of a Christian. To say, I ain't gonna say nothing until you meet your maker, that is cruel. That's not Christian at all.
Sir, we will face our Creator. You know, I read a really interesting, started reading this really interesting note from a woman who was born because she was conceived in rape. And she said, the book is called Fostered, and I'm blanking on her name right now. She's a beautiful woman. And she said, because I was thankful that I was given the chance at life and not sentenced to death because of the crime of a man. And I think it was just something to consider. You know, we're always learning more. And I think now in 2022, medically and scientifically, we have more information. I actually think this issue will be null by the time millennials rise up and are coming through and getting older, because they all had their siblings, their cousins, their roommates on a 3D ultrasound. And so medically and scientifically, we know more. It's not, well, if it ends up being life, we know that it's life. And it's not because I said so. It's because God said so.
I love that. It's not because I say so. It's because God said so. So their argument is not with pro-lifers. Their argument is with God.
I formed you in the womb, I knew
But
you.
what if people don't believe in your God, right? What if people don't believe God and you are then taking that decision away from them? I will tell you, I agree with what you're saying. And the ladies at the table know that, and our viewers know that, because I'm Catholic. I believe life begins at conception. I do believe that when you have an abortion, you are murdering an unborn child. I believe all of those things. But what do you say, Elizabeth, to the fact that I can't force my religion and my beliefs on other people?
No, I don't
That is
force
not
it.
the American.
That's the thing, is they're not forcing. She's not forcing her religion on other people because she is standing for something that is good. So in other words, it's not a matter of forcing. It's a matter of right and wrong here. So when the state make laws to protect, to say, if you do this, there are consequences, right? When the state does that, is the state doing something religious here? Or are they doing something that is, I would say, a civil liberty, should I use, right? It is just the right thing to do. Like, religious view or not, because we're not talking about religious as far as which God I'm going to worship. No matter who a person is, we can all agree on the fact murder is wrong. It doesn't matter which religion you are a part of. It's just common sense. So when you look at the 10 Commandments, right, the first 4 speaks about our relationship toward God. The last 6 speaks about our relationship toward each other. Thou shalt not murder is in the last 6. It's kind of like religious laws, the first 4, and civil laws, the last 6. So when you get the difference between those two, what the state enforce with the last 6 is perfectly fine. But if the state touches any of the first 4 in a free society, in a democratic society, that's just wrong. Automatically is wrong. That is where we need to cross a line. So you can't force a person to agree with your religious view or worship your God if they are not convicted to do it. But as far as passing laws that protects human beings around you, which are the last 6 commandments, it is the duty of both, not only the state, but even the church need to be speaking about some of this stuff, because it's a matter of life and death. That's what we're looking at here. So that idea of if the person doesn't agree with your religious view, how can you force it on them? You're not forcing anything. You're simply saying murder is wrong, in the womb or outside of the room. That just makes perfect sense to me.
American way.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I'm glad you asked, because I know, and I think oftentimes we get caught in the right legislatively, like we're getting caught in the law. And just because something is a right doesn't make it right. And I think we need to be able to have these conversations about what is really ethical. And according to God, I don't force religion. And I also think sometimes in Christianity, we need to offer more mercy.
But when
we
you
need
are-
to not shame
but
women in hard
when you are
situations.
prohibiting something, you are in fact judging them.
No, that's incorrect, woman. First of all, she's right about the fact there needs to be a lot more mercy coming from the Christian church. And I agree. Enough shouting and yelling at people who have done wrong. I don't think this has been good. This has been done way too long, and it's not very Christian at all. But while we ought to be merciful, we also have to be righteous, right? Righteousness doesn't have to be dumbed down in order to be merciful. We can be merciful and righteous at the same time. We can be gracious and just at the same time. It can happen. So I think learning how to combine these two, that's the challenge for a lot of us as Christians. But she's on point with that. But this doesn't mean we can't call something out for what it is. All right. So
But when
We
you
need
are-
to not shame
but
women in
when
hard
you are
situations.
prohibiting something, you are in fact judging them.
what are you talking about judging them? Well, judging to correct and reprove, yes. But judging to condemn and kill and pronounce death on them, that's not something we do as Christians. But, and again, these women on The View, they judge people all the time. I mean, like, they should really listen to their own tapes. I mean, I've heard them call DeSantis a fascist, like crazy stuff. They will call out people's name just because they disagree with them politically. So these women who are talking about judging people here, as Christians, you can't judge, but y'all judge people all the time on your views. And I don't understand how the double standard, one, it fits for them, but it doesn't fit for us as Christians to judge and call out a sin for what it is. Give me a break.
I will.
And you know,
speak
I
on
want to
the-
just point out that there are 117,000 children waiting to be adopted right now. So it's not such a snap thing. I'll have the baby and it'll be
Well, and
put up
also
for
the-
adoption.
Our social
There are
services.
children
our
waiting
social
out
I actually work with
services-
an agency that places infants, and I have seen families waiting 6 years for a newborn. They're out there.
that's-
I
but
think the
that's
matching.
anecdotal.
Some people don't adopt certain types of babies too, and so when you see those babies, they get turned into a social system that fails them.
They need to stop bypassing the reality of the fact these children, they still have value despite of the circumstances and challenges that goes through the adoption process. When they bring up this argument, they are somewhat making it appear because of these challenges that these children is better off that we killed them and got rid of them. To me, it's the same argument that Adolf Hitler had with, you know, eugenics, right? Just getting rid of the mental ill, the people with mental illness, get rid of them because they were a plague to our society. They didn't have much value and significance in our eyes. Just get rid of them. To me, when they talk this talking point, that's what I'm hearing. And it's like, who are you to determine what is life? Who are you to determine my life as a baby just because I might go through challenges in this world? Just because I might not be adopted at a time when you think I should be adopted. It is not up to you to do that. You have to allow life to play itself and allow God to make decisions and allow circumstances to play out. You just can't make decision for me whether I'm worth living or dying, depending on the challenges that I might face in the system. That is not your call. But again, that's what they keep using, and it's problematic to me.
I mean, I watched that trials of Gabriel Hernandez. He was not.
Why?
but-
Because it's left to the government. If
Yeah,
if
but
we
I mean,
rely
like,
on nonprofits that are actually doing the good work, they're out there. I promise you, I will post them.
That is actually true. Too much government is getting into this stuff. When the church comes in and do their part, and we get involved in doing what we can to help these mothers and these babies, we can really make a great difference in the world for those who are struggling with abortion, right? We can really make a difference. But when you get the government involved, everything the government touches, they mess up. If you know, I'm not anti-government here, but I'm saying government really, a lot of time, they're not for the people, all right? There's a lot of selfish interests. You know, I see the role of government, but when it comes to abortion and stuff, that is none of their business. It's really none of their, it is our responsibility, both as Christians and worldlings, to say, we're going to make a difference. All right. It's not something we should get the government involved into. So I totally agree with her.
And I see that you're saying both can exist. There are good situations, but when you're sitting there, when you talk about life and when it starts, so much of my energy goes to that life of the mother, because some people, you say, if they're raped and they can have a baby and it's a life, and it's a beautiful concept, but I would not to pretend to judge whether that mother's life didn't have value and prayer and recognition from God and what was best for them.
Do we have to? I would ask you this.
In this case of a rape, I'll leave that decision with the mother. And that is an unfortunate thing that happens. But again, it's not left to you, ladies at The Views, to make that decision for the mother. This is where you need to step back and allow these mothers to come to the conclusion based on the heart conviction whether or not I'm going to keep this child of this rapist. I cannot say each mother have to keep their child. I cannot say each mother have to have an abortion. I'm not saying this. This is left to the mother, that specific mom that is going through her specific thinking, her own processes and her own things that's going on in her mind, her own conviction, and however God is working in her heart. That is something that I step away from. I cannot tell you what to do. But I think to bring that into the equation, when they start bringing up these arguments, you can tell they've lost the battle. That's a sign they've lost it.
Do we have to choose one life over the other?
Yeah,
they both
because if
have
you're
value.
dramatically
Sometimes you do, just like you have to choose this conversation
It's
or the
over.
commercial.
That's a good way to end it. I'll give you this one, Whoopi. What's your perspective on this? I don't want to add any more to that, and I can give you some Bible here, but I will choose not to. I want to hear your conversation. What do you think is happening here? Are these ladies right or wrong? Please put your comments below. Share your thoughts and perspective with me. Until next time, remember, and as always, look unto Jesus, live by faith, like and subscribe, click the bell icon, and share this content with somebody else. Until next time, I'll see you on our next video.